Hey, what's up guys? Going to be doing a new knife review today, and interestingly enough, I'm doing a super cheap knife. I get a lot of requests for stuff like this. Something to be remembered is that we in the knife group, we as in knife people, we really have an appreciation for knives. Alright, it's not just, hey, this is what I use to cut stuff. We love learning about them and we really appreciate them. We appreciate the art of the design that goes into them, the mechanics of how they're used, you know, how folding knives work, different locking mechanisms, stuff like that. It's very fascinating to us. It's a hobby. It's a full-blown hobby. But the fact remains that there will always be a market for knives like this. There's a lot of different reasons why you may want a knife like this. First of all, you can know everything there is to know about knives in the world and have $40,000 knives and, you know, this, that, and the other thing, and still love something like this. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame in liking knives like this. I've been exposed to a lot of different knives in my lifetime. I feel extremely lucky. I've literally had thousands and thousands of knives pass through my hands. From knives like this to much worse to, you know, really high-end knives. Most of the really high-end stuff I haven't owned and just be able to play with and handle. But I always appreciate all knives, and there will always be a market for every type of knife. Okay, a lot of you guys will watch this video and say, yeah, it's a piece of crap. You know what? This is a piece of crap that I happen to love. This is a knife that brings me quite a bit of joy. I personally got this knife for $3 from Deal Extreme about 2 or 3 years ago. There's not a lot of knives I could say that really bring me joy for $3. Something that makes me smile, something I love playing with, something that looks cool. Is it going to last long? No, definitely not. It's not going to last long. Is it an awesome knife? Nope. Not even close to being awesome, but it's still cool and it's still entertaining, and this is a part of all of us out there. If you like knives, you have to admit, maybe not publicly, but you still love cool knives that are cheap. There's nothing wrong with that. That being said, for a cheap knife, it's really not bad. This is one of those cases where they could probably get away with charging $20 for a knife like this and people would still buy them all day long. But this exact knife sells for about $6 or $7. $6.99. I'm going to link you to a version from Smoky Mountain Knife Works. This one happens to be marked Smith & Wesson Extreme Ops. And on the back it says first production run. Highly collectible, I guess. Yeah, no. These are just generic stampings that you know, some of these counterfeit companies have overseas. So it doesn't really make a difference. I know Taylor Cutlery imports a good chunk of these, and they basically spread out what company ends up with them. So whatever markings on your blade could be random, but they're all the same, you know, all stainless construction, urban camo type folding Karambit. It's this exact same knife. You'll find it a lot of different places. $7 plus shipping from Smoky Mountain. You may pop on eBay or Amazon and find it for $1 or $2 less. Who knows? But for a less than $10 price tag, it's a very, very cool knife. It's very useful. It's a frame lock. It actually has a perfect lockup. And that's with a lot of use. The blade steel is crap. It's, you know, I couldn't tell you what it is. I can say it's very comparable to an AUS 4 in my experience. Very soft, but it's also going to be good for you if you're not good at sharpening. So you don't have to worry about sharpening a super steel. And trust me, you will get a lot of practice in sharpening if you're going to carry and use this thing. A lot of people may look at this and say, yeah, it's a fantasy blade. That's just a toy. Give me a real knife. Well, I would beg to differ. The Karambit style knife in general is very useful at utility besides defense. It's obvious. You know, you look at it, it's the scary knife. You know, it's great. It is great for defense if you know a little bit of tactics and reverse grip. And even not, even if you're using this in a standard grip with or without the hole, it can still be very effective for defense. A hawkbill blade is a very devastating blade. All right, by nature, as you're cutting into material, it slices in deeper. All right, it's pushing the material in as you're pulling the knife out. It has nowhere to go but deeper into that blade, and the constant curvature of the blade is also more effective. It's a fantastic design, and even for utility, for ripping open, particularly ripping open boxes, it's great for that. Very comfortable to use. Great grip. There's a 3-finger choil on this. There's a thumb ramp with jimping on the back. It's a great knife to use. And all for $6.99. Act now, you can get 300 of them for $400. No, yeah, you know, it's something that most of us knife people would laugh at this point. Once you know so much about knives, you look at something like this and you just kind of scoff at it and you go, it's kind of a joke, right? I don't think so. You know, sometimes I get a little high on my horse with the knife snobbery, and I got to bring myself back down, because there's nothing wrong with knives like this. There will always be a market for people who just like knives. They don't care what the blade steel is. I know, it's shocking. You know, there's people like, oh, I love knives, and I get all excited. Oh, that's awesome. What's your favorite steel? What do you like? You G10 guy? You carbon fiber? What do you like? Stainless? And they go, what are you talking about? I'm like, these are all knife components. What are you talking about? I don't know. I just like knives. Okay, that's cool. You're allowed to just like knives, and you're allowed to not know a thing about them. It's okay to pick a knife because it's cool looking, all right? And use it sometimes, and it cuts stuff sometimes, and it goes dull on you, and oh well, maybe you throw it away and buy a new one. Who knows what you do with them? But there's no shame in that, is my point. And I never discriminate. You will see knives on this channel that might be worth $1,000 a piece, and you will see knives that are worth $5 a piece. Okay? And that's just how it goes. So anyway, some basic specs on this, because these are all my own measurements and weights and everything. Of course, you don't really find specs on this, not detailed ones anyway. But my measurements gave me 4 3/4 inches on the length closed, 3.5 inches on the blade. Of course, blade steel is unknown, but I can tell you we have a slightly hollow ground. You know, you can see the grind lines in here still. About a mid grind, right where the logo is where that comes across. You can see that pretty clearly. It sliced pretty good when it was brand new, because it was nice and sharp. But as you know, it goes dull fairly quickly. What I noticed about this blade is that the hawk bill it's very reminiscent to a linoleum knife, where it's not just a consistent curvature. You see, hawk bill blades, they all curve in, right? They all kind of look the same, but if you stack them on top of each other, there's a lot of different variety. Some of them will curve in a lot more extreme, okay, a little bit more of a hook. Some, obviously, if the blade's longer, you can have a more progressive curve. This one has a little bit more of a straight edge. It's a straight edge for roughly 40%, I would say, of the blade, and then it really just starts tapering out and giving you your curvature. It is an aggressive cutter. It is awesome for opening boxes as long as you keep it sharp. I can tell you that the hardware on pretty much all cheapo knives are cheap. These heads will strip out easily. You have to be very careful on cheap knives because they're not tempered screws. They use the cheapest, crappiest, softest steel. You know, you may even get aluminum screws, who knows. But you will also need to Loctite them. So just be very careful in disassembling your knife and putting your hardware back on. This one here, just from the factory, brand new. See how this is nice and flush? This one just isn't flush. It's just how it works. This screw's too long for this body. These are some of the problems you get with cheap knives like this. It is a frame lock. The lock is beautiful. I mean, it's perfect. And it's never failed on me, never loosened up. No problems with it whatsoever. It's very easy to disengage. All right, very easy to open. There's a thumb opening hole in this. There's no wave feature or anything on this. Of course, having a thumb opening hole, if you wanted to, you take a Dremel and very quickly turn this into a waved version, which might be a modification I'll do in the future just for fun. Since it is such a cheap knife, you can get a couple of these in the store and practice doing that if you wanted to. You know, for 20 or 30 bucks, you get a handful of these things and play around with it. It'd be a lot of fun. But, you know, locks up every single time, engages great, feels really good in the hand with or without that hole in a natural grip like this. In fact, I can say from using this, I grab it like this. It is a tip down only pocket clip, okay? It's not tapped, it's not swappable anywhere. All folding Karambits, I do prefer a tip up, okay? For the obvious reason of exposing my hole. Yes, I feel like I'm in second grade. I am exposing my hole. Come on, guys, grow up. Grow up, really. Yeah, obviously you want to, with a folding Karambit, whether it's waved or not, you want to be able to access that from the pocket, okay? So you can get right into your reverse grip. if need be. So, you know, that's one drawback in my opinion, although small. If you wanted to, I suppose you could take the hardware out here and or just take a generic clip and you know, tap and put your own clip on here. Kind of a pain in the butt. Most of you guys out there, you might have a pocket clip lying around, but you won't necessarily have the tools to tap into this steel, because it is steel as opposed to a G10, so it's going to be a little bit harder. What else is there to say about it? It's a cool knife. You notice that it sounds like a pair of scissors, and there's a reason for that. It's because the blade is rubbing the entire time. Adjusted the pivot, there's just no way to take the slop out of here. You can see our blade centering does not exist at all. It's horrible. So much so that when you're going to close this, if you put any kind of pressure over to the side, I mean even just the slightest bit of pressure, it hits your frame, okay, which will dull your tip. All right, so something to be weary of. Again, this is going to be just a very generic utility blade. It will not last long, and what I mean by that is, I mean structurally it'll last a while. It won't last forever. I would say if you use this regularly, it might last you 3-4 months or so before you have some major catastrophes. But for $7, who knows? Is that worth it for you? $7 for 3 months? Or do you go out and you get the $50 or $60 knife you really want, or maybe, you know, you fork over $150 or so for a nicer folding Karambit and have it forever? I don't know. That's it's up to you. But yeah, you will have some issues with this knife, as you would any cheap knife. But all that being said, I would definitely say this is worth more, in my opinion, than $7. I think that you can easily get away with selling these for $20 a piece, and people still being very, very happy with them for 20 bucks. Having an all metal construction like this, it is a little bit more durable, and it's been working for me. It's fine. There's really nothing wrong with it. It's a great cheap utility knife, and it's definitely cool looking. And I know I feel very secure in the fact that when I was carrying this, although I personally carry multiple knives, so I'm not really concerned about it, but I would rely my life on something like this temporarily, okay? If you wanted to buy a knife, a lot of people ask me, what's a good defense knife and blah, blah, blah. As far as defense knives go, I always suggest cheap knives. And people, well, what if, you know, cheap knives are going to fail when you really need them? That's ridiculous. First of all, if you're carrying a knife for defense, you're not using it. So blade steel and all that kind of crap, that goes right out the window. You get the thing, you sharpen it up, razor sharp, okay, and that's all. Secondly, if you're going to use a knife for defense, there's a lot of things you have to consider. A lot of things. Although I think this is a very effective design, keep in mind something like this looks mighty scary. Looks kind of like a gang knife to just the average old grandmother who might be, you know, your jury. So keep that crap in mind too. I really think some of the best defensive knives are the plain Jane looking knives. You get something like this and then it's, you know, the sheep out there, they think you're some kind of criminal just for having it. But regardless, you know, you don't have to use a $300 knife to defend yourself. Anything that's sharp and pointy will do the job just fine, even if you don't have any training. So anyway, I'm not going to get into defense too much. I think it's worth it. I think that if you like Karambit folders, and I think if you got $7, I think it's definitely worth getting. It's a very, very cool knife. It's very fun. Like I said, I just don't discriminate against cheap knives. There are some cheap knives that are just dangerous, and those ones I will always suggest staying away from. Okay, you don't want a dangerous knife. The one reason why I usually scoff at knives like this, it's not the, hey, I'm better than you, you know, I can get $70 knives, $100 knives, $500 knives. It's not about that. It really never is about that. When someone who is knowledgeable about knives suggests you get something better, it's not to say that this won't work. But what they're trying to say, whether they're literally saying it or not, is that it will not work safely for you. When you use a cheap knife hard, you're really running the risk of hurting yourself very, very badly. All right, because cheap knives could have sharp blades on them, but when they fail or a pivot breaks or your hardware pops out, your handle comes apart, your lock fails, something of that nature, you will hurt yourself very severely. And most people end up hurting themselves more on cheap knives because they fall apart. they will literally fall apart on you, as opposed to an expensive knife where maybe a lock fails because you're using it improperly or so forth. So just be very careful. I'm never against cheap knives. I'm just against using cheap knives really, really hard. If you need a hard use knife, this is not your thing, okay? It's definitely not your thing. And if you need this knife for a profession, EMT, fireman, policeman, I don't know, maybe you just cut open boxes all day at work. This is not the knife for that. This is a fun play knife, fun pocket knife, fun show your friends knife. Okay, there's no shame in it. So, anyway, that's all. I thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your enjoying the video, even though you can hear Gus loudly snoring because he played for 2 hours and he's conked out. Sounds like an old man asleep on my couch. Yes, thank you for dealing with that as well. I don't have the heart to wake him just because I'm making a video. So, anyway, that's all. Thanks for watching. I'm going to have plenty more knife reviews very soon, as well as some other stuff. So, hope you enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Take care.